Welcome to the Condor DM show, and with me today is famous Grim Jim, or James Desborough, game designer, YouTuber, just a person I would say I'm very friendly with over the years, and has been here for a long time. So let's start there, Grim Jim. Let's. When did you enter the hobby? What brought you to fantasy and tabletop role-playing games? Let's go with the basics.
So I was very young, somewhere between 6 and 8 years old, and me and a friend loved fighting fantasy books. So every lunchtime we would sit outside and we would play through them together. And usually I would read out the room descriptions and then he would make the decisions. So we kind of independently invented role playing in a way, except with very limited choices.
Yeah.
And then after a couple of years of that, they came out with the orange fighting fantasy book with the were-tiger exploding out of a dice on the front, which was make up your own adventures. Mm-hmm. And I thought that meant, oh, this is going to tell me how to make choose your own adventure books. But it wasn't. It was an actual very basic role-playing game. And in the back of that, there were pages telling you about other proper role-playing games that existed and hobby shops. This was like a whole new world to me. So I pestered my parents. They took me to a model shop, which was where a lot of RPGs were sold back in the day. And I picked up Games Workshop's Battle Cars board game and MERP, Middle Earth Role-Playing, which is like a lighter version of Rollmaster, which looking back probably wasn't the best way to start because it's very complicated.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And after that I was off to the races. So yeah, fighting fantasy, MERP, Dragon Warriors, Twilight 2000, these Tunnels and Trolls. These are a lot of the early games that I played. I didn't play D&D until I was in secondary school, about age 12 or something. So I know that's unusual, and that's usually something I bring up. I didn't start with D&D. I'd already played a dozen different games before that. So,
well, you played a bit of D&D, as they count it, Tunnels and Trolls, the very simple version of it. You start off with a game based off Rollmaster. Yes, one of the most technically hard games, and games that sort of will feel like crap and look like crap until you get used to them. So
yeah.
At least you start on the mild end of Rollmaster, not straight to Rollmaster. Jeez.
And I loved The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, even that young, particularly The Hobbit. Lord of the Rings was a bit beyond me at that point, so it was an obvious one that appealed to me.
Now, what was your reason for skipping over D&D? Was it just because it was so commercial, or you just happened to like these other games before you really bothered to get into it?
I'm trying to remember. So I'm picturing this model shop / toy shop, and they had one rack of shelves that was board games and role-playing games. And obviously this was the first time I was buying anything, and it wasn't necessarily obvious what you needed to buy looking at the books at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
The D&D stuff was all down on the lower level, and it was during BECME, so there were all these different boxes with different colored covers. It's like, I don't want to do basic, but does that mean I have to buy basic and expert? I don't have enough money for both, so and I think I'm beyond basic. I've been playing these game books and so on for so long. I think I kind of know what I'm doing, and this looks like a complete game in one box, so we'll get that one.
That is a popular thing. A lot of people came into the hobby young, and you had to sometimes put your money together or just have enough just to buy one thing, and that one thing had to become what you were doing, which I totally get. Which is where I seen a Matt Colville video recently talking about how cheap tabletop role-playing game people are, and I'm like, well, because he's talking about back in like the 80s and 90s. I'm like, they weren't cheap. It was just mostly young kids and poor kids. So
Yeah.
you get what you can afford, not that you're purposely being cheap. It's just like, well, I got $50. That's going to buy one game maybe. That's it,
Yeah.
and I better invest, and that game better work for a while. Okay, so that's what brought you into the hobby, and of course, we jump over to YouTube. Okay, here's another basic question: what got you started making video content? Why'd you bother doing that?
Originally, the idea was that I would have the YouTube channel, and it would in part be to promote my other stuff. So I could make little explainers or advertising videos or whatever. I did a couple of things like that, and then I kind of lost interest for a while.
Yeah.
Then I had my first round of controversies, and what really annoyed me was here I am. I'm even at that stage. You know, I've had a bit of a freelance career as a writer in various ways, and yet I can't seem to make myself understood by certain people. And I found that intensely frustrating. And I thought it must be something wrong with me in that I'm unable to communicate my ideas. Maybe it's just they're not picking up on my tone or my body language or something like that. So I began doing videos as sort of replies to the kinds of things that people were trying to pin on me at the time. It didn't particularly work, so I kind of backed off from it again a bit. And then the Gamergate controversy kind of exploded and hit the internet pretty hard. And I found that I had a lot to say on a lot of the issues and misconceptions that were going on around that.
Well,
So then I started.
if we're going to jump here, let's just jump right into it.
Oh,
This is a
okay.
question I was going to ask later, but I'll ask up front right away. Is your take on free speech on YouTube, especially with the Gamergate stuff? And you have shared, and I won't pinpoint what any political video, but you have shared your politics very openly, and went after controversial topics quite often on your YouTube channel. It's something you definitely found a new path into YouTube on. So go ahead and tell us all the issues around that. Let's just dive right in. There's no getting around.
Okay. Well, so I don't really put my politics in my games particularly. There's a couple of games where I do, but I'm fairly explicit about that. The Little Grey Book is one of them. But not a lot else. I mean, politics can shape how you express things, how you describe things. Your point of view is bound to be in your work, but I choose to do it subtly, subtextually, not to hit people over the head with propaganda for the most part. Like one of my most political games is a card game called Election Party, but it's not actually political because it's just making fun of politics as a whole. So
you have a history of doing ironic stuff like that with some of the game stuff and stuff. Where it seems like you're making fun of something, but there's a secondary reason why you're making the thing. Yeah,
there's usually a subtext or a nuance, or it's not what you think it's about. It's about something else. But we live in an age without nuance, and people can't read subtext, so that tends to get me in trouble. But yeah, the whole Gamergate thing. See, I regard the free speech issue as rightfully belonging on the left. Yeah, I look back to history and I see things like the Berkeley free speech movement, the Oz trial, video nasties over here in the UK, satanic panic based censorship here in the UK, the Obscene Publications Act here, how things have changed since the internet came around. And the left is usually what is fighting for people's rights and freedoms and right to expression and so on. Like the fact that LGBT people can express themselves and be open about who they are, that's an aspect of free expression and free speech. And so the idea of people calling themselves left-wing and yet being incredibly censorious and small c conservative really pissed me off to no end. But basically, so I started taking them to task and trying to explain more broadly what was going on. Because, I mean, I was still a kid at the time, but I remember fighting and arguing about the Satanic Panic in particular. Yeah, I was writing letters to newspapers defending role-playing in particular. We had some evangelical type come into school and host one of our religious education classes, and it was all this video called Doorways to Danger, which you can find on YouTube, and it's all about how tarot and heavy metal music and role-playing games are all evil and satanic and are going to corrupt the youth or whatever. Yeah, I took him to task in the class, you know. So I have a long history of not suffering fools particularly gladly. It's tricky with Gamergate because when it started out, the majority of people involved with it were left-wing on this side of the pond and what you call liberal on the US side. And yet it became smeared and represented as this kind of right-wing thing. And so gradually it did become a more right-wing thing. I felt less at home. But the reasons that I got involved were still valid. Because I believe that even people who disagree with me politically or socially have a right to express their views unless we can point to something that's actually harmful, like directly physically harmful resulting from it, like appeals to violence or
how was that
anti-vaccinations.
That had to be a weird yo-yo, because I know you're someone on the left, but here you're in a battle where it's like you say, some of the people, it's becoming right-wing. And it's almost like the issue gets moved over to the right to a degree.
Yeah.
And I know you made some weird bedfellows because of you agreeing with certain people, extremely different people than you, about the issue. Did it bother you a lot, or did you actually somewhat like taking advantage of the fact that it allowed you to talk to people that you might not otherwise talk to?
What's that saying? I would work with any man to do good and no man to do evil, something like that. So long as I agree with people on an issue, I can work with them on that issue. I don't have to sign on or agree to any and everything else that they say. There are some things that do cross the line for me, and I will cut myself off from people if they cross that line. Generally speaking, again, that's harm. But it was very, very weird because here's me. I've been left-wing my entire life that I've been aware of politics, and quite radically left-wing. I won't go into some stuff because I don't think we have statutes of limitations in this country. And yeah, I figured my left-wing credentials were unimpeachable, but it turns out that they were quite impeachable. I also thought that a lot of people involved in the role-playing hobby would share the same outlook as me on censorship, because we'd lived through the Satanic Panic and the Vampire Panic to a lesser degree and all that. So it was completely unmooring to me to suddenly be accused of all these things and to be cut off from a bunch of people and kind of chased out of some of the freelance work I was getting at the time, though I'd already begun to transition out of that to working for myself. Yeah, I won't beat around the bush. It was incredibly unmooring and depressing, and it drove me into a suicide attempt and helped precipitate a whole bunch of mental health issues, which I'm still living with. I've kind of rebuilt from there, but yeah, it was that severe. It wasn't the abuse. It wasn't what was being said to me. It was the fact that a whole bunch of people that I'd been friends with and I'd worked with for years at that point just turned on a dime and didn't want anything more to do with me. And then more recently, the same thing has happened. So a lot of those strange bedfellows that I made, more on the right, or at least the libertarian sort of side of things, they've decided that I'm persona non grata as well now. So I've been cast out by both tribes.
Well, I just got to tell you that you're welcome in whatever this is.
Yeah.
Whatever Muppet Farm I exist on. you're definitely welcome here.
So I do also want to be clear about something. I don't bring this stuff up to elicit sympathy or poor me.
I take it as getting to know you, Jim.
Yeah, some people do take it that way. That's it's not what it's about. I'm coping. I'm okay. I'm still here. I want other people to not feel ashamed to talk about their issues and things. And for whatever bizarre reason, some people look up to me. So if I can encourage them to be open and live more openly, then I'll do that.
I can also see that you're like a social butterfly who likes to connect with people, but you like to say your piece at the same time. And it's sort of a weird world to live in where you can't just say your piece and still connect. And that got to be the most disappointing part.
I'm not particularly social. I like a structured social environment, which is part of why I was so into gaming, I think, because it's a good reason to get together with people and you're doing an activity, so you know why you're there. You're not making small talk and so on. You're there to play a game, and you make lifelong friends in so doing. So yeah, that's been important to me. I'm just very practiced now at talking to people.
Oh, yeah, you can tell. Maybe that's exactly what I'm saying. Is you've been doing the YouTube and public speaking thing for so long that it can be read wrongly.
Yeah, I did public speaking at school actually. Terrified me the first few times, but you get used to it. It's like a muscle. Yeah, exercise it, and you get better.
Oh, I've done a little bit myself, a little bit of stage talking and all that before I got here, and I was right away. I was told myself when I came to YouTube, if I get 10 people, be happy with 10 people, and if 100 people don't like you, you're still worth something.
Yeah,
I just told myself not to ever look at how many people that follow me as a way of value judgment on myself. Right? Know this before you start. Because if not, you'll get in, and when 100 people don't like you, you'll be like, did I screw up? No, dude, you're actually okay.
Yeah, like, the whole YouTube thing was never about like having a YouTube career to me. It was just having an outlet and being understood, or trying to be understood. So.
Well, let's go to one of your earliest videos and focus a bit back on gaming here, which is you call it the Gaming Manifesto. Now, your first rule, I wouldn't count as a rule. You say, your mileage may vary. This is a personal manifesto. I think that just could have been stated as part of the package. But let's go to what I would call the first real rule. Now, I want to go over each one of these because these are things that could be like topics for videos on their own. Mm-hmm. And this was many, many years ago, over a decade ago, when you made this video. And all these things can be talked about now. So I want to see where you're at now in these things. So the first one is games should be fun.
Yes.
Okay.
There are different values of fun. Right? What's fun for one person might not be fun for somebody else. At the table, you have to compromise with each other. And like a stamp collector leafing through an album is having fun. That might bore you to tears. You might like going on roller coasters, which someone else might find horrifying and vomit-inducing and terrible. These are both fun, right? Yeah. But they're very different kinds of fun. So they should be fun, but like X, value of X. There are many different things that different people consider to be fun.
Okay. Fair. That's a fair. So what you're saying is not fun like you're laughing out loud, but like stress could be fun if you're in a game where you're like going through a hard part, but you're in a weird way enjoying it. So it's not about fun, it's about enjoyment, you would say. Like games should be enjoyable.
Yeah,
Because
a horror film should ideally scare you or disgust you, or it's a kind of cathartic experience. That's fun in a different way. So yeah,
fair enough. System matters.
mm-hmm.
Do you still stand on that?
I do still stand on that. Perhaps softened a smidge, like a couple of % or something. I think a talented games master can make just about anything work, but they'll be working against the system, or the system will be working against them. If you try to run a creepy, spooky, long-term, slow burn, investigative Call of Cthulhu game using the feng shui rules, it is going to be incredibly difficult for you to do that, but not impossible.
No.
And equally, if you want to run a Hong Kong action cinema game using Call of Cthulhu, equally, you're going to be having a hard time of it. It's not impossible, but it doesn't exactly work. So to me, the perfect game is one where the setting and the system synergize and work together. So the system helps reinforce the genre expectations and the outcomes that you expect, and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's where I am with that.
Yeah, when we think of tabletop role-playing game systems, we're not just thinking about dice rolls. We're talking about setting. We're talking about feeling. We're talking about atmosphere. We're talking about so many things involved in the tabletop role-playing game. So yes, I totally get what you're saying. Then, well, this one leads on. Plausible worlds.
Yeah, that's still very much a guiding principle for all of my game design. Is I'm aiming for plausibility. What I mean by plausibility is that it passes the sniff test in the moment. Yeah, it seems reasonable that a character with these abilities and so on should be able to do this, but not that. So it's not quite realism. It's more forgiving than that. And maybe you look back on the adventure session later and you think, hang on, that was wrong. But no one noticed. It's fine. So it's a sort of forgiving form of realism, where realism can mean genre emulation. So again, moving back to your Hong Kong cinema example, if you're watching a Hong Kong action movie and one guy throws a pair of magazines across the room and the other guy catches them in his pistols, that's perfectly plausible in that situation, in that kind of film. But it's not in a sort of hard-bitten Swedish crime drama. You wouldn't expect that kind of thing to work. So there are different measures of plausibility, but plausibility overall is always what I'm aiming for.
I'm thinking of going back to like a game like Traveller. When I think about, I get plausible worlds, with plausible outcomes, a reality, and a good Traveller game master is going to build trust with his players by making every reaction or everything realistic. Enough that when they do something, they go, okay, what's the world's reaction, game master? And if that world reaction makes sense to the reality they're in, like you're saying, fantasy doesn't matter as long as fantasy is real in that world. Whatever the setup is, as long as it's realistic to that thing.
Yeah, like internally consistent would be another way you could put it. I keep bringing up these guys, but when I used to live in Basingstoke, which is a couple of towns over, there was a group that met to play Traveller regularly. And they were all engineers and mathematicians and computer scientists. And so they had fun really playing strictly by the rules and like getting out their slide rules and calculating delta V and orbital vectors. And they were having a ball. Bored me to tears, but they were having a great time. And they were playing Traveller more as realistic than plausible, where I don't think you necessarily lose anything by simplifying some of those things and not doing complex orbital calculations or whatever else. I think you can still have fun and still play it as hard science without having to go overboard. But they were having a great time, and I wouldn't take that away from them.
Traveller's a mixed blessing. It's like for people like me and you, we can have a lot of fun with it. There is a system set up there for us to be freewheeling and let players do some amazing things. But It is made by a wargamer. And there's elements of it, like you're saying, that if you get deadly serious into the numbers, you can spend all that time on that game. But that game has like, it's almost like 2 games in one. Like the way me and you would approach it is completely acceptable by the designer. He is not opposed to, and the game is actually made for our approach. But ironically, like you're saying, it's also a secondary. If you're someone who cares about this stuff, you can skip all the stuff me and you might appreciate and go straight to that pure realism. But I get what you're saying. That's Traveler for you. Okay. The next one. I am not a storyteller, but before that, I do want to point something out here. Legion of Myth or Max Liao shared your Stray Crows is up to 15K.
Yes. Thank you. I was very surprised. Let me just look what that is in pounds.
Yep.
Because that's what I'm working in, obviously. Yes, so £11,200. And the next stretch goal is at £13,000, which most of the predictors are saying I should get to. But we're on the long, slow middle of crowdfunding now, so things tend to...
successful run, man. We're going to get to the topic at the end of the interview here. It's going to be one of the last things we cover, Stray Crows. But just to say, congrats and well earned.
Thank you.
Well earned. I mean, I'm dead serious. You built up a following. You've invested your life into a lot of things that are behind this thing right now, and it's nice to see a payoff of investment. Sometimes you feel like that's not all that worth it, but at the end here, we're looking at a project that's actually kicking ass for what you're doing. Because it's one thing for an OSR game to blow up, whatever. But when you get these sort of more independent individual games that are outside of that, to see them do really well on any level is just amazingly, especially where you're at right now. It's amazing. Props to you, dude. Yeah. So we were going on. I'm not a storyteller.
Yes.
I think we were just talking about just now. But, all right, let's dig into that.
Yeah, so
sorry.
I really do like the storyteller games. I played Vampire since the day it came out in the UK. I got heavily involved in the live action roleplay official organization for Vampire and attendant storyteller games in the UK. So, but I think calling the Games Master a storyteller was a mistake, because what happens then is that you get Games Masters who want to tell you a story, not allow a story to develop from what happens. So you don't. Emerges. Yeah, story emerges. I usually call it in my design that or adventures that I write, which I don't do that often, but I call it setting up a context in which stories can occur, and that's what you should be doing. And Vampire is very, very good at that. But by calling the person in charge storyteller, it really encouraged railroading and sort of dictatorial sort of games mastering, while trying to be about narrative and character at the same time. If you were lucky, you got someone who understood that. If you were unlucky, you got someone who's trying to foist their bad fanfic on you. And in the LARP society, there's certainly more of the people trying to foist their bad fanfic on you. So yeah, that's left me with kind of a sour taste in my mouth when it comes to overly narrative focused games. So it's something I either say explicitly or I imply in most of my games, is that story should emerge from what's going on. It shouldn't really be imposed, and that's part of the reason I don't write a lot of adventures.
That was my one criticism of World of Darkness when I crossed over and tried Vampire and did a few of them. I was like, well, story emerges from D&D, but then when I get over to World and I'm running it as a game master, I start realizing it's all that's happening here. It's just that World of Darkness does a special focus on narrative in the way that it was in D&D, but it's not focused on a lot in the language. They're focused on performance. World of Darkness focus on it like verbally in their game. Again, D&D, you can find hints of all this stuff, but it was never a pure focus textually. It doesn't drill it at you. When you get to
Yeah.
World of Darkness, they just said, like, we're actually going to not just sort of sleight hand throw this in there that you're doing it or that narrative counts. We're actually going to focus on it on purpose.
Yeah.
It was like,
Most
great.
Yeah, most of that was in the presentation, and I think that does matter. I mean, if you look at Lamentations of the Flame Princess, mostly it's just basic D&D, but the way in which it's presented to you, the way in which it's talked about in the book, the way in which it's conveyed to you makes it feel like a whole different game. In a similar way, like Storyteller, the system is somewhere in the middle when it comes to crunch. There's a few bits and pieces in there, like Humanity, which sort of encourage you to think about sort of narrative mechanics and so on. But for the most part, it's a fairly conventional RPG mechanically.
Yeah.
And then it's the presentation that really pushed it in that direction.
I think it
But
was
I
ahead
think
of its time.
yeah, I think it was the next logical step after the Hickman Revolution, where you had to focus on story and Dragonlance and so on. I mean, Dragonlance suffered from it a bit as well because you had the books, and so there was a story going on without you if you were playing in that world. And some of the same things happened with Vampire, with the whole idea of the meta plot that was going on. So you had to buy all the books to keep up with what was going on. Great marketing, not so great for running games where you could be effectual. But yeah.
No, I do say I do have a special place in my heart for World of Darkness. Like you say, the lore was so enticing, but like you feel like you were sometimes outside of some of the lore you're reading with that game. Like it's about different people. It's not about me, baby. Like
just before we move on, I did have one other pet hate about World of Darkness books. Was that often you didn't have a reliable narrator. Like as a games master, you couldn't be sure what was true. And they hid a lot of information in bad writing, bad stories, short stories that people put in the books. And I didn't appreciate having to wade through that to find out what was going on.
That was not good. I still go back to that old school, throw out some things you don't like. All right. The next one. Agendas are boring.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I will probably amend that slightly. I've probably softened a little bit on that. What I mean by that is, well, hopefully this doesn't offend anyone, but it's what I call the Christian rock problem. Right? If you've listened to Christian rock, 99% of it is complete ass. And why is it complete ass? I mean, there are things like gospel choirs and so on. That's religious music. It's fantastic. Whole bunch of classical musicians did religious music. That's fantastic. Why is Christian rock ass? And it's because they put the message first ahead of the music. And if you do that, you're likely to end up with something that is not as good as it could be. It's why all of Rage Against the Machine's later albums are rubbish, apart from the first one. Right? Clearly, they've been working on that one for a while, and so the quality was there. But after that, it just tails off pretty rapidly. And so, if you're trying to propagandize through your games or your writing or your art or whatever, then you're not really making art anymore. You're propagandizing, and so it suffers. And like I was saying, we live in an age without nuance, where people can't understand subtext and subtlety. The point of the X-Men was that they were picked on and prejudiced over by society because they were different, and you could then project whatever you wanted onto that. Right? That was subtext, and it was universally applicable. You could apply it to race relations. You could apply it to LGBT. You could apply it to disability. And the X-Men could be a stand-in for all of these things that you cared about and saw yourself in. But now everything has to be explicit. So it's not enough that the X-Men are hated and hunted because they're mutants. Well, we've also got to make a bunch of them like expressly political. We've got to make a bunch of them really obvious.
Their connection is to the generic side of what they're doing, saying we can connect with anyone who feels oppressed by it for whatever reason. And we don't
Exactly.
care
And
what side of a fence that you're on.
that was the genius and the universality of it. And it's the same with most other things. It's fine to have an agenda. It's fine to have to. It's fine to want to put it out through your work, but for God's sake, use a bit of talent and subtlety and artistry. Don't just conk people over the head with it.
Well, that's why I love the Beastie Boys, because the Beastie Boys, ironically, had a lot to say. But like what you're saying is they did the one thing wise that you would, I think, support, which is put the art before the message. And then if the message comes in, it supports the art, but the art is not secondary to what they got to say. And they say a lot of really out there things in some of their later, but it's all art first. And you can see the quality all the way down the line, which is my way of understanding what you were saying when you started pointing out the different rock and the different group. I'm like, I get what you're saying, because the Beastie Boys do exactly what you would advise to do, which is put the art first. And then if you got a message you can throw in there, go ahead. But if the art isn't first, now it's just propaganda, not art.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally get that. Okay. Now, the next one is a pretty straightforward one, but I mean, if you got something to say on it, fair enough. I make what I love.
Yeah. I make things primarily for me because I want to. I'm not about to particularly follow any trends or anything unless they actually interest me. And I think work is usually better when you do that rather than chasing trends and algorithms and whatever's hot right now.
Yep.
Because you're always going to be following if you do that, and you're never going to hit as hard as the person that broke the ground. So I would rather do my own thing, even if it's less successful.
1,000,000%. I get you don't want to be generic part two. You want to be yourself. You want to bring your own little thing to the thing. I totally get that as well. I hate being I'm not a copycat, so whenever I do something similar, I try to bring some of my own gimmick. So I feel where you're coming from.
Yeah. I actively sabotage myself if I get too popular with something. So I deliberately try and piss people off immediately afterwards.
There's some videos where that's the way it does feel. Like when I was going through your videos, even though I was like, there's a lot here, but I'd be like hitting ones where I'm like, he's just trolling. That's just straight trolling.
Very rarely, but sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, next one. Once it is out, I don't own it anymore.
Yeah. I think a lot of game designers get incredibly precious about what they've made, and I understand that. And if you were publishing something, if you were just publishing a storybook or a film or something, then that's static media, and the worst you're going to get is people interpreting it wrong. But with role-playing games, or to a lesser extent computer games, what you're putting out there is interactive, and people are going to do what they want with it. Like the Gibson quote, the street finds its own use for things. So it is completely pointless getting precious about your game and how it should be played and who should be playing it and who isn't allowed to play it. You can't stop anyone. If you produce a game and for some reason a whole bunch of neo-Nazis love it and start buying it, take their money, spend it on something super gay. Right? Their money spends as well as anyone else's does. So
damn right.
You know.
Damn right. I love the way you put that at the end. That's a good one. Okay. I don't know where you stand now on this, but at the time you said, I am not a professional.
That's tricky, because by any objective measure at this point, I guess I am, because I've been doing this 25 years plus a whole bunch of sort of fanzines and things, sort of semi-professional before that. But my attitude is not a professional one. I mean, if I'm working for someone else, I'll do the work. I'll do my level best to get it done on time. Professional in that sense. But this is a hobby industry. And I think if you come at it with a corporate mindset, as I think Games Workshop and Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro have been increasingly finding, then you're not necessarily going to have an easy time of it. You might stay the biggest because you've got the biggest budget and the biggest potential audience and the rest, but it's not going to be an easy ride. I think you need to approach role-playing games as more of a hobby, more of a craft, more of a almost a sort of folk tradition. And if you look at other communities that do that sort of thing, like my wife's into all kinds of fiber art stuff, like crochet, knitting, all of that stuff. Those kind of communities, they're not very commercial. They really enjoy supporting small creators who maybe raise goats on their own land, card their own wool, dye it, and sell it. And there's a lot of that same attitude in role playing, where a lot of us like to support indie creators and get to know the people. So it's more personable and amateurish, but in a good way, in that you have that connection. I don't mean like parasocial, whatever. It's just, you're helping out someone who has a creative voice. Maybe you know a bit more about them. You know that you're supporting them. We support each other by sharing ideas and systems and shouting each other out on our channels or our social media. If you approach it with that mindset, the dreaded word community, right? I know, but it does kind of apply because we all share an interest. If you approach it with that sort of viewpoint, make time for each other, help each other out, I think that helps everyone. A rising tide lifts all boats and all that, which is probably too hippie-ish for people, but it's how I feel.
The way I look at it is you have a rebel mindset, and the idea is, even though rebels are independent people, it's also the idea of coming together. Sort of makes sense to me. It's helping other people, allow them to be rebels by saying we're going to support each other, so you don't have to be locked into this commercial gimmick. And we know without some support, you can't be independent. That's how hard it is to be independent in a lot of things now, to be the rebel, to be that guy. Like 20 or 30 years ago, that door might have been open for a lot of people. In the last 10, 15 years, that door is slammed closed. You're independent, you're a rebel, you can't even come in. And so guys like you who have that sort of free-minded mindset, you probably go into it going, we're not coming together as a community, as some corporate community. We're coming together to say there's other people like us that don't have the same access to that independent path into what we're doing. And all we're doing is opening a door in a like-minded way, instead of we don't own you, but we'll help you get in here. Well, that's sort of the way it comes across to me.
Yeah, fundamentally, I don't think I'm better than anybody else. I've got experience, but like, I treat my community as friends and acquaintances, not as customers. I will always try to make time for people. I will always try and help people out or give them advice, make resources available to them where I've already created them, things like that. I found in more recent years where I've begun to slow down a bit, getting old, and my health isn't so fantastic. But spending more time like mentoring and helping and advising other people really brings me a sense of enjoyment and accomplishment that's been missing for a while. So I just really enjoy doing that.
Well, we're answering sort of two questions at once. So I want to ask you to go on about this one, because we're talking about now relationships are business. And that's, you're sort of talking about being friendly with people you're dealing with now and forming that community. Does that sort of relate to that sort of statement right there? Relationships are business?
Yeah, it does relate to that. And the way in which you relate to your audience or potential audience, it does matter. Like, I actively choose to be open about the things that interest me and my politics, even though my politics aren't necessarily manifest in my games, because why should I have to censor and control myself to conform to some corporate standard or something? Here I am, take me as I am. But also, when you're in business with other people, I mean, you're saying this is a very old video, so I was probably doing a lot more freelancing at the time. But you might be the most brilliant auteur game designer ever, but if you can't turn a manuscript in on time, if you can't rein your ego in when you're dealing with an art director or an editor or a line developer or whatever, you're not gonna do very well, however brilliant you are. I mean, I don't think I'm particularly talented game designer or writer. I can be slightly funny occasionally. That's what got me going in a professional career. But I was able to turn the material in on time, and I didn't kick up a stink too badly when people wanted to edit it too much, and that's what let me get my foot in the door and end up here.
So I get what you're saying. You're independent in your mindset, but there's still a level of professionalism that has to happen. Like, say, relationships are business. You got to show up on time. You got to, and the better people can trust you, better relationships people have with you, the more they want to work with you.
Yeah, and I still don't particularly view it as professionalism. So, like, I did a lot of freelance work for Mongoose Publishing way back when. Matt Sprange or Sprang, however you pronounce it, I always get it wrong. But the main thing was I wanted to complete the project on time for him because I kind of like the guy and I want to stay fairly friendly with him. So it's more like doing a favor for a mate rather than it is clocking in at a job, doing your hours in a suit sort of mindset. It's a different mindset. It's that more,
I get what you mean,
hobby craft sort of mindset. Yeah.
So I get what your relationships are agreements where you got to come through. That's the business side of it. You got to treat it like a business. Like every deal you're doing has to be come through, and then people want to work with you when you are that person. Totally get where you're coming from. Okay, the next one will be, this is one where you curse. I can be an asshole, but you are a prick. And I'll just mention a guy named Andrew, and I won't even mention his last name. There you go. You can take it from there.
I think people who are assholes, for the most part, it's part of who they are, right? Very, very broadly speaking, right? If you self-describe as an asshole, you're an asshole, right? And you can be difficult, and you can be strident, and you can be all of these other things, but it's not usually something you actively choose to do to other people. Whereas if you're a prick, you're actively being a prick to other people. You are choosing prickness. It is something you do to people rather than something you are. So if I piss you off, usually it's not because I intend to, but I can also be a prick sometimes. But if you're coming at me, generally speaking, you're being a prick. You're choosing to do it, right?
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. It's you can be an asshole in your own defense, right? But if people don't push you there, you're fine. You're saying the other person is just being a prick no matter which way you come at them, and they're choosing to be that. And that's sort of what makes that sour grapes for you is with those people. It's like saying, like, look, I can defend myself, but I'm not out here punching innocent people in the face. And what you're saying to the other guy is, you're out here punching innocent people in the face. So that's the difference between me and you. I can be vicious, but I'm not attacking people. You can be vicious and you're freely attacking people. That's a separation from the assholes. I just wanted to, I'm glad we're on the same page. Now, the last statement you make, which the one that made me laugh, fuck them if they can't take a joke.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So that was an ideal I was working towards at the time, because I did care what other people thought, and like I wanted to be popular, I wanted to be successful, and more than anything, I still want people to understand what I'm saying. I want people to pick up what I'm laying down. And at some point, and I think I've reached that point finally after however many years it's been, at some point you just have to accept that some people are never going to get it. They're never going to understand you. They don't want to understand you, so they're not going to put the effort in to understand you.
Exactly. Yeah.
it's far easier for them to continue in whatever misapprehension it is. And unfortunately, and this is a terrible thing to admit as a writer, there is no magical combination of words that can convince a person. Some people, sure. Everyone, no. Some people just will not be convinced. So it's another thing you just have to kind of let go and let it stop bothering you. It still does bother me. I'm still working on it, but I think I'm most of the way there.
Because there's so much. There's so much. There's so many reasons you want people to open the door. Or they don't know who you are. There's a side of you when you turn the camera off that other people you express it to. You're like, why am I unable to? Or even if I could at this stage, people have decided it's no more on the table. I know what that's like. I can express a completely different side of me during streams like this or streams with anyone. And some people have just chosen, this is who you are already, Steven. That's it. The line's been crossed. You're over, baby. So
yeah,
I totally get where you're coming from. Well, I knew going into that video and looking over all those points was going to be valuable, because every one of these points could be their own videos, and I know these are things you talk about over the years or even recently, so I knew this was all going to be stuff you were comfortable with. That was a lot of gaming and a lot of personal opinions, but let's jump to something a little off tabletop role-playing games, something your YouTube channel has quite a bit of, which shocked me, because I really, as I'm doing my research, I don't realize just how many videos you got of video games. And I was amazed, because I'm a bit of a gamer myself here and there over the years, right? So it's like okay, well, I'll try not to make it too generic. What are some of your favorite games that you've definitely say maybe showed on YouTube? And are you still playing games now?
I do still play games, but I go through like obsessions with a particular game for a while, and then it's hard to shake me off that game onto a new game. I think I showed some No Man's Sky, which has been through a very remarkable transformation from when it first came out.
Yeah,
I actually did enjoy it when it first came out. There was something very zen and meditative about flying from empty planet to empty planet, taking in the different animals and the different planets and the environments. And so I actually enjoyed that. It was a good way to kind of chill out and just like breathe at the end of the day. But they've added a whole bunch of stuff to it and really resurrected the game. So that's one that sticks with me. Cyberpunk was another big one, and another bad launch that got recovered. I've wanted to set foot into a sort of digital version of Night City since the Black Box 2013 Cyberpunk.
Oh, baby. Yes.
Book. So, yeah, that was what, 88, I think, 88, 89. I bought that in a Games Workshop store. So that tells you how long ago it was. It must have been before 1990, because they used to sell stuff other than miniatures. Yeah, Cyberpunk was my great tabletop gaming love before Vampire. It was what I played the most and loved playing the most. So being able to set foot in Night City, albeit a 2077 Night City, was a dream come true. And for whatever reason, when I first installed it, it ran fine. So, but I think I've played that through more times than just about any other game I've ever owned. I think.
Wow.
Because it's just that good, and the different starting points do really change the way you approach the game. And I might be tempted to go back and play it again soon, actually.
See, I get you talking about, you're a nerd like me. The second you start talking about something you like, oh, wow, I forgot about that.
But what got me was, in most of these open world games, I don't ever use fast travel. I normally walk from place to place, even in big virtual worlds, because I just like soaking up the ambience and finding things.
1,000,000%.
And Night City, you could literally like sit down on a park bench and watch the world go by, and it was like being there in all of these games that we used to play based in Night City. Certain parts of it were recognizable from playing in tabletop. Excuse me. And yeah, so that's another one.
So they really nailed the atmosphere as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, yeah.
Yeah.
And I play a lot of the sort of crafty survival games again because I find them meditative.
You must have had a good game master during your Cyberpunk run as a tabletop role playing game. Because
I'm a forever DM, so it was usually me running it.
Well, then, so you want to know what? See, you're one of the most people I knew that ran the original one ran a very generic way because they had a hard time understanding what the designer wanted. But I imagine you know exactly what I mean when I say that. It can be a little tedious, but the payoff is you do actually do what Mike is looking for, which is create an atmosphere. And if not, you get a generic version of Traveler.
Yeah.
If you go away from that, right?
Yeah, so part of the reason Cyberpunk was so impactful on me was because it was the first game book I read that told you things like, you know, make a mixtape to put on in the background, and change the light bulb to a red one or something, you know, create an atmosphere, you know, put on your mirror shades while you're playing, that sort of thing. And that was new to me. Also, like, you know, I started with MERP because I loved The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I got Cyberpunk because I'd been reading Gibson's short stories like Burning Crime, all of that. So I was already kind of steeped in Cyberpunk, and so it was massively appealing.
What was to me too. It's just I've heard a lot of criticism over the years, and I'll talk to somebody. They were like, "Oh, it's okay." I was like, "Yeah, let me guess. The guy didn't really push on the character stuff or spotlighting that much, and spotlighting parts of the world to match with what the characters do." And I said, if you do the spotlighting correctly, the setting sells itself, right? Because you'll have to adjust the setting to the characters, and the characters are meant for the setting. They really are. They do feed on each other together. As a game master, you'll notice this just happens. You don't have to do a lot of work after you start spotlighting characters because every spotlight is matching. They need to run down to the setting and feel the setting, and you have to create the atmosphere through spotlighting characters. That's the big secret I found with the original.
Yeah, and the Night City source book, the separate one for the 2020 edition, that was hugely helpful, like street by street, building by building.
So was the martial arts in that one too. It's a lot better.
Some of them, I think, and then there was expanded in Pacific Rim. But yeah, so you really got a sense of place in the city. You got to learn the geography. You got to learn the streets, what was where. And so the city became another character. That was a big inspiration for me working on Whitechester, was to do the same sort of thing for an early modern fantasy city. In the same kind of way that I'd seen it done in Night City. There is a new version of the Night City sourcebook coming out for Cyberpunk Red, which I have on pre-order. So I'll be interested to see that. I will be very judgmental because I love the earlier one.
It's one of the only new games I'm investing in right now is the Cyberpunk Red and the stuff related to that. So I love Cyberpunk. You want to know why? I have paused on getting the game, not realizing that it was so attached to the actual tabletop role-playing game experience that I guarantee before October here, I will have that game now, baby. Totally. Thank you for that one. All right, let's jump into a product. I think the earliest product I could find that you officially worked on. Tell us about the Munchkin Guide to Power gaming. And just a little note, it was so good you won an Origins Award
for this. Yeah, back when that meant something too. Yeah, 2000, 2001, I think.
I think somewhere around there. Yeah.
And that was my first professional product with my writing partner at the time. So to win an award right out of the gate was hard to take in, quite frankly. Did it
help inspire you to continue? Were you already going to keep doing this stuff, or was this a big kick in the arse when you got the award saying?
I was already gonna keep doing things, but the award kind of cemented it, and people were so sort of happy for me. yeah, it was a big
Because the
boost.
award was a big issue back at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, I will bring up other aspects of that as we talk about it.
Yeah.
So I was out of school, out of college, didn't really have anything going on at the time, looking for work. So me and a group of friends got together and we said, look, we're all gamers. We've been writing our own stuff for each other. Let's shop ourselves around and see if we can find some work. So we formed our little group and we just emailed every role-playing game company that had an email address, which was not all of them at the time because this was mid-90s. People only really started to get massively online after 95, so this would have been just after that, I suppose. So yeah, we kind of shopped ourselves around as a sort of ready to go little mini development studio. It's like, do you want to give us some work? We can pump something out for you. We've got these people with these skills. We've got this equipment. We can do what you want.
You weren't using the term post-mortem at the time. That doesn't come until 2004, right?
Yes. Postmortem Studios founded. Well, we can talk about that in a minute.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I think we were Dead Hamster Games at the time, something like that. Yeah, so we shopped ourselves around a whole bunch of companies, and a couple of them wrote back. A handful, most of it was like no. But we had sent out a bunch of our ideas to all these companies. That's something I wouldn't do today. I would wait until we had some kind of agreement going on. But yeah, Steve Jackson Games and Mayfair Games were the two that really got back in touch with us. Mayfair were looking to do a new edition of Chill, and we kind of went through a sort of interview process, made up some creatures and things for them, and they were all set to give us the job of developing the new edition of Chill, and then they went bankrupt. So that was that could have been a very different career path. Steve Jackson Games, they were interested in the Munchkin's Guide, which is something we just put on as kind of a laugh, really. But they said, yes, we'll take that if you write it. Write a couple of chapters. If we like them, then we'll sign contracts and do the deed. So we wrote a couple of chapters. They thought they were very funny. We wrote the whole book. Phil, I'm spacing on his last name now, but he was the editor. I wasn't too happy about some of the edits, but I guess he knew what he was doing. And I tapped John Kovalik to do the illustrations. They got him to do a couple, but he couldn't do all of them. I think we've got Errol Otis and some others in there. And it's just this sprawling book of basically how to cheat at tabletop role-playing games. Very in cheek.
And now there's a secondary. I noticed with some of your work, there's when you do something like this, there's a secondary, which is it really a front? It's not so much cheating, but teaching game masters how to deal with this stuff. Was that really the secret of the book? Was you trying to teach game masters sort of what players might be doing, trying to scam?
A little, and to kind of share that you're not alone. There are, these people are out there. They walk among us.
They do.
So sharing things like there's a section called "The Gun is Your Skill List," because you can use a gun to solve most problems in a game.
Yes, you can.
Intimidation, I'm holding a gun to your head. Seduction, sleep with me. So you can substitute lockpick, bang. There's all these things that go. So why do you need all these skills? Nah, just take a gun. You'll be fine. Things like that.
Issues.
Yeah, so it's just a whole bunch of like exaggerated table stories from our various careers. There used to be a thing at UK conventions where they would put up a big sheet of paper and there would be a topic and you would make up stuff to put on there. So one of them was like useless spells one year. And we must have spent an hour sat there putting useless spells down, like summon moderately sized rodent and a lot yogurt fling and things like that. So yeah, that was fun, and a bunch of those ended up in the book, and yeah, and it did really well. And then it led to all the other Munchkin stuff, which basically kept Steve Jackson Games in business.
I could buy that. Yep.
Because without the Munchkin's Guide, and then the Munchkin D20 stuff, and then the Munchkin card game, which is still responsible for the majority of their income, if I remember correctly, yeah, they probably wouldn't still be with us. I'm a little bit sour about it because they never offered any follow-up work or any more money.
Yeah, I mean,
even though,
genius.
yeah, even though that stuff is all derived from what we were doing, and if I was Steve Jackson, I would have given the creator a bit of bonus money. But it is what it is.
I don't know if you're coming up with ideas like it just sounds like such genius entertainment for the mindset of the people that are in the hobby. Like it's something you know is going to sell to us. We're going to find that
Yeah.
funny because it's so relatable. It's the type of comedy that if you did outside of us, it would be lost on everyone reading it. But inside, it's such a perfect inside joke related to realism. And that's relatable humor is always going to make people laugh when they can read it
Yeah.
and go, yeah, yeah, I totally get that. Like you personally experience it, and you don't have to know the writer or know it. You just got to read it and go,
yeah, I know that guy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, in such a genius way, you knew that was going to sell. So it is sad that you didn't get a little bit more enhanced by that work, but you
Yeah.
did get an award. It does get you
Yeah.
somewhat into having a name enough to say, like, look what we did here. That's not
Yeah.
a joke. That had to be good on the resume.
Yeah, that was
could have
good, and
worked.
it led to the work for Mongoose. It did lead to me being pigeonholed a bit as a comedy game writer, which I began to chafe against after a few more books. But I'm still very grateful to have had the opportunity and that level of success that early, which doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, totally understand that. Yeah, it sucks to be pigeonholed into one type of thing. That could
Yeah.
not be good. Okay, we'll go right to the thing we were going to talk about, which is post mortem studios established professionally on January 1st, 2004. What brought this?
Right. So I'd done a couple of freelance bits, but then I fell into an actual job, which was initially doing tech support for a company doing recruitment consultant software. And then I moved to their web division, and I was doing graphics and layouts and things for their web component that they were trying to get off the ground and sell off. So I was there for a good few years, living in a house share with some friends, all gamers. So like every weekend, it was Gamer Palooza at our house. You know, we had loads of people around. We were always playing these long campaigns, like really sort of character-led, great stuff. And meanwhile, I was still doing a bit of freelancing, but a lot less because I had an actual job. Tends to get in the way of doing anything fun. Yep. Then the .com crash happened, and the company decided it was time to downsize. And my immediate boss had been embezzling from the company, so our accounts didn't look particularly great. And like 3 of us worked at the same business, and we all lost our jobs the same day, which then meant we couldn't stay in the house because one of the housemates was too proud to apply for a housing benefit to tide us over. So we all ended up going back to our respective families. I was living out of one room with my wife for quite some time, and I was unemployed. And it was after the .com bubble had burst, so there were no jobs in anything that I was any good at. And also, it was kind of like it is now for people applying for jobs. You can apply and apply and apply, but a whole bunch of other people are applying for every job. And like they were taking one look at my CV and going, well, this guy doesn't want to stack shelves. And they were right, to be honest. But, I was applying for anything and everything that was out there to get some work. And there just wasn't any. And I'd been out of work for 18 months, not even a sniff of an interview in that whole time. And I was trying really hard. I was applying for everything, like hundreds of CVs a week. And then after 18 months, the unemployment office forces you to go on these bullshit courses because they figure you've been out of work this long, something must be wrong. And it was very much like baby's first CV writing course. And I was bored out of my mind. I finished the entire course in half of the first day. And I still had to keep coming to this thing. And then I gradually realized that all the other people on this course, with one exception, were drug addicts, alcoholics. One of them brought a knife into the office and threatened the tutor. I thought, well, fuck this. Fuck this. And so I said, right, I've been doing this freelancing, and it's been a whole bunch of paperwork because if you make more than a certain amount of money, then they take away your unemployment benefits for a while, and then they give them back, and it's a huge pain in the ass. Why don't I just go into business for myself? This whole PDF thing is taking off. I don't have to have a huge amount of money to get started. A couple of £100 would probably do it. So I saved a bit. My dad gave me a bit, about £500, I think. And that was enough to make my first game. And that made more than I spent making it. So I was able to make my second game. I was still doing some freelancing and I was getting some residuals from that. And so I ended up working for myself full time.
And this is where the pitch, the ability to publish ideas that interest you without needing another publisher's approval. This is what you learn from this whole process. You like this, being able to do it yourself instead of needing someone else to say, yeah, of course you can.
Yeah. I found that I don't like having bosses, even if I get even if I get on with them, right? Yep. I don't like being told what to do. I like to be in charge. Thank you very much. Because I was just constantly chafing against the requirements that people had. And so this, kind of like starting the YouTube channel, it gave me an outlet to do my own thing and to express myself.
Okay, well, let's move on to a thing that I seen you try to start. I know there were some ups and downs with it, and there's a sort of added on question to this. First, the ZLART scholarship. I could be saying that wrong. Let's talk about that, but also because it is so much of a big topic nowadays, I know you appreciate art, real art. What is your take on AI art in or around the hobby or in general?
Okay. Well, I'll start with the ZLART scholarship. So
ZLART, sorry.
Yeah. So Zell was a young artist who worked for me on a whole bunch of stuff. And I really enjoyed working with him because he was a young art student getting into debt for a qualification that probably would never earn him very much money. And I was able to pay him some money, help him make his way through art school, expose him to a wider audience so that other people could employ him. And I really liked that a lot. That's something I've constantly tried to do, is employ people who need the money for one reason or another. Unfortunately, so he eventually graduated and he went to Korea to be an English teacher. And then he was hit by a bus, just like that, killed. And so I tried to do something that I could do to kind of honor his name and memory and do the same thing to other people, help them out, help lift them up. And so all of his work that he'd given me to use for stock art, I started collecting that money in a separate pot. And then each year I would offer that pot to artists, submit your work. I'll pick something. It will then join the stock art collection and will raise money for the future. I did that for several years, but it was kind of depressing because it was a lot of work and back end stuff, and it was taking up a lot of my time. I really wanted to do it, but the response just wasn't there. And then in more recent years, it's become even more difficult because there's a hell of a lot of scam artists out there now preying on commissioners, which I really hate, because I can't do the kind of open calls that I used to do. You know, oh, do you need to make rent? Are you disabled? Do you need money for medication or whatever? And you're an artist. Hey, get in touch. I'll give you a very loose deadline and I'll pay you some money up front. I can't do that anymore. And that was already the case even before AI popped up. So even before AI was happening, I was getting people applying and showing me their portfolio where the art was obviously by different people from one image to the next. And then if I reverse image searched it, I found out it was by someone else entirely. And if it got as far as payment, I would never have to pay them. I would have to pay someone else, usually with a Russian or a Middle Eastern name. It's like, why? Oh, well, I can't get PayPal in my country.
It's ours wanting to do charity when your purpose is actually good. You really are looking at people that might need the help. They might actually be good artists. And it's like, hey, if I can give you some support now and that gets you a foot ahead, we all benefit from you doing better. Like, I get what you're saying. Your idea is we all benefit from that guy doing better around the hobby, because then everyone knows that guy and that guy can be doing more work right away.
Yeah. It gives me a soft glow of good feeling. But you just can't really do that anymore. So that project is kind of sidelined. I still take the money off separately, but then I just use it for art commissions from people who I can vouch for, who I know need the money. So I just kind of do it privately and quietly in the background still, which is a shame. And I wish I didn't have to do that. With the AI thing, in part because the environment is so difficult for finding artists, I understand completely why some people use AI art, because you can get pretty close to what you want. You can get it relatively cheaply. Art prices are... the role-playing industry does not pay very much, and it never really has. And the amount of pay you get hasn't really gone up in the last 25 years, pretty much. So you're not going to make a lot of money at this. But at the same time, a lot of artists, because of, well, Kickstarter and crowdfunding culture, are wildly overcharging for the level of skill that they have, or the audience that they're trying to appeal to commission them for work. So if you're a role-playing game producer, your margins are already razor thin. You probably can't afford to get very much art. There is stock art out there that is good, but it will make your product look kind of generic because lots of other people have used it. So the temptation is there to use AI art. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm trying to figure out what are good ethical uses for AI in a workflow, because I don't think it's going away. I think people have invested too much money in it to allow it to go away. So we're going to have to learn to live with it. So then how do we use it effectively and ethically and still support human artists where we can? So where I've kind of settled at the moment is, if I'm doing a weird project that nobody's going to buy and I just want to get it out of my head, I will be okay with using AI for that. But I will always prefer to hire real human artists and pay them a decent amount of money. So for the bigger projects that I think are going to do okay, then I'll do that. And the stock art stuff's in the middle. We do sell a lot of stock art at Postmortem Studios on Drive-Thru-RPG by industry veteran Brad McDevitt, who could really use the money. So there's a little tip for you.
Well, it's such an individual sport. Art's not a team sport type of thing, and I find the networking is horrible. Like you're saying, there's guys out there that are going to price an affordable art. They'll do it, but you don't make much off a piece or two. It's almost like you need to get a whole gaming book guy to come to you and say, "I need you to do everything if you want to make some real money off of this."
Yeah.
Or you go to like this, and then there's a gap. Then there's a guy over here who has less skill who's going, I charge 5,000 for a cover.
Yeah.
Huh? You know what I mean? Or like 5 or 10 grand, whatever they charge. There's not a lot in the middle. There's not a lot of people coming together because it's such an independent sport. I don't call it a team sport. That's why you don't get a lot of good networking between people, which is sad. There's individuals like you that can see the benefits of bringing people together, talking to people, trying to create that network. Problem is, so many people are it's about who they are. So they don't even come together when a guy like you opens the door for like, come here and network. Come here and network. Come talk to like blah. Let's have these discussions. Let's bring this in. That's the problem I see. And then you're left with the customer. The customer doesn't know what to do. It's hard to find the affordable guys that you might know. When they see the guys that are easy to find, they're the overchargers, like you talk about. They're the easiest to find. How ironic, right? The guys who charge too much. So then you're left down the middle, and then you get even more confused when you find out over 80% of customers will simply buy the stuff.
Yeah.
But actually, like you'd think with all the preaching and protesting, the customers would be a 50-50 thing.
Yeah.
More like over 80% of customers are like, no, we'll buy it.
Yeah. That's the truth. Creators hate AI and will pillory you for even looking at it. Customers mostly don't give a shit. So I would say probably 90% of customers don't give a shit. That 10% will be as strident as the anti-creators. And like I say, I'm not particularly on either side here. Because AI has tremendous possibilities for helping neurodivergent people and disabled people.
Yep.
It can automate a whole bunch of tasks that are incredibly boring and annoying if you're a creative. You want to spend your energy being creative. You don't want to spend it on bullshit. And some of that can be offloaded to agents and things if you can afford them. So, yeah, like I say, I'm trying to cut this kind of middle path here, which isn't good enough for anybody. Like the boosters are fanatics and the antis are fanatics.
The comments that you see is it flattens, it gives us an even playing field for some people that normally wouldn't have it or have access to. Yeah.
Thanks to AI art, there are people producing board games, which are obviously massively, intensively expensive when it comes to art assets, who otherwise would never be able to produce board games. Yep. There are people producing RPGs who otherwise would never be able to afford to make a start. And some of that stuff is going to be good. There are other people that are going to abuse it and flood the market with bullshit. You've got to take the rough with the smooth, and we've got to learn to adapt and to filter and to find like these good ethical uses for it. But you can't even have the conversation. I've been trying to find reasonable people on both sides to come together on my channel and have a discussion, particularly around the disability issues and the neurodivergence issues. And I can't get anyone to do it.
You can't yell it out of existence. It is going to be a gimmick in our future. And it's more about, well, if it's going to be here, like you're saying, it's wiser to think about how do we use it instead of letting the careless people that are going to ignore your protest. Like what you're saying is a guy like you can appreciate the principles behind the arguments against AI art. You get it. You're not unreasonable. You're actually reasonable to them. But that means you're going to slow roll it out. It's the guys who are two-faced and going to use this stuff in the worst ways are the guys that are going to keep advancing it right now. Yeah. When the advancement should be happening with a crowd that has principles and standards.
Yeah.
Not a denial of the reality of AI. It's just an acceptance, but let's bring people in who are more principled, have a little bit more demands, but they're still open-minded. And we're not getting that because everyone seems to be, like you're saying, on that side of the fence, not open at all. And it's such a shame because I see some good with it, and like you said, some bad. But
yeah.
let's move on to another game you worked on, one that I was surprised to run into. Gore.
Yes.
The RPG. Let's talk about Gore. I want to hear more about this.
Okay. Some of this might be too much information. So, growing up pre-internet, I quite quickly discovered with the onset of puberty that I liked a bit of slap with my tickle. And I thought something was wrong with me, that I liked this stuff, right? BDSM stuff. I thought that I was some sort of monster, and I tried my very best to suppress these ideas and thoughts. Then a friend who was moving away bequeathed me his first 25 books of the Korean saga, and I sat down and I read them all pretty much one after another. And through that, I figured out, hang on a minute, this is a thing, right? It's not just me. There are other people who have similar things that they like, and it's not necessarily freakishly wrong or whatever. I managed to get hold of a copy of Norman's Imaginative Sex, which is a very influential early book on sort of role play in the bedroom. And yeah, I always liked these books, and it's quite aside from all this kind of BDSM relationship stuff in it. The world building is fascinating and actually quite well done. Most people think it's just a sort of sexy planetary romance like Barsoom with nipple clamps or something, but it's more than that. There's more to it. And I've always been fascinated by sexuality in role-playing games and how it's often there, but we never really explore it or talk about it. And it's always seemed weird to me that we spend so much time on violence and combat and gratuitous critical hits and everything. But what really motivates people in their lives is the quest for a partner, for sex, for reproduction. These are fundamental to human existence, and we never really tackle them. So that's the sort of high level sort of idea. The mid level is I thought this world was interesting and was a great role playing game environment, and then at a more sort of base level, kink, which tickles my pickle. So after quite a few years of sort of thinking this, I just took a chance and I reached out to Norman's agent and said, hey, this is just like a wild shot in the dark, but I would love to make a role-playing game based on this property. Can we come to some kind of agreement? And to my unending surprise, they said yes, which I was not prepared for. So I immediately scrambled to put something together. I reached out to a fetish artist who I sort of knew, Michael Manning, to do the art for it. He did a fantastic job, though his life unfortunately turned into a disaster as we were fulfilling the art, and so it was hugely delayed by years. But eventually it was out there, and it's been surprisingly well received. Some people use it as a punchline when they want to insult me or something. Oh, it's him. He did the Gore role-playing game, as if I'd be ashamed of it or something. But I'm not.
No.
And I finally got to do a game that has sexuality quite central to it, that's mature and isn't like nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more. So, yeah, that was a hugely fulfilling project to do.
Here's what I found with some of the more so-called extreme stuff I'm warned about before I get to it, like, say, Gore or some of the James stuff. James Ray was recently here. When I get into it, what shocks me the most is not just, there might be topics that I'm not big on that you're going to be into, But what surprises me is how intelligent some of the ideas are within. Like you said, reading the book for the setting there, but even the gore game itself has some really interesting, like your take on the setting is beautiful. And same thing with James's work. When you would go to like the stuff about his magic, where it's like the vagina and the eldritch cock, I'm like, it's silly and definitely has some weird sort of taste and all that he puts up front. But you're guys that are like you and him that are very out there, your minds are also made for gaming. And what I'm saying is, by the time I dig in, there are so many things there. It's like I would tell anyone. My advice would be to anyone: read what Grim Jim is putting out there with the gore. There's just too many good ideas in it that you can. I'm a thief. I'm one of the. I still do some universal gaming. I'm the type that will see something and still go, oh, I could take that over to this. That's going to the GURPS thing, or that's going to whatever system I'm using. But I love picking the minds of people, even people that I might go into it going, well, it wasn't my first taste. But I go into it going, I'm not judgmental. I believe in freedom and do what you want, and the audience will choose if they like your stuff or not. I don't go in there with hate, and I don't assume bad things about people because they're into, like, I'm into all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm not a bad person. I don't promote this stuff in real life, but I get that we're weirdly into some stuff. I went into it realizing you and James, I just got to say that because a lot of guys out there will judge you for the gore thing. My first piece of advice for any gamer is read it. They'd be like, well, what about the stuff you don't like? No. No. Jim has an amazing mind for gaming. And it's like you said about the art and music thing, about the propaganda. When you make the message the main thing, it's no good. But when you remember the art is the thing you love the most about the thing, boom. When I went to read gore, that art was there. You get what I'm saying? It's a game. It really is a game. Like, regardless of what you think of it, it's a game. And there's a lot of gamey elements in there that even if you're not into gore itself, are worth knowing. You get an education from reading that game. Just wanted to give you some props there. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think the problem is that some people seem to assume that because you write something or you create something that is a fantasy, that it somehow reflects your reality, right? So because gore, for those who don't know, it's based on a sort of very strong idea of male domination and female submission, that this is somehow the natural state of affairs of the universe and whatever. And within the context of the world that Norman writes, it's almost true. It's not quite universally true. But that doesn't mean that I believe that. It doesn't mean that I agree with that point of view. It's an interesting world to examine, just like I could read a book about a Jesuit missionary. I'm not religious. I'm not Christian. I would find the idea of spreading the good word to people quite offensive personally, but I can still read and enjoy the book and enjoy the story and inhabit a different point of view for as long as I'm reading the story.
Even oddly like the character on a certain level, even though you disagree with someone, you can still like them, is what you discover when you read about people like that.
Yeah, I like well-written villains in a lot of books. It doesn't mean I want to do the villainous, horrible things that they do. I'm just interested in the mindset. It's like how some people become obsessed with serial killers and true crime documentaries, right? It's a vicarious thrill, but they're not about to go out and murder anyone. So there's this disconnect between my ability to segregate reality and fantasy and other people's inability to segregate it. And it just leaves me feeling horribly confused.
It's like Conan with slavery, right? It's like, you love Conan, and without the slavery, a lot of his story wouldn't even make sense. Like, it sort of makes sense to the world he's in. But does that mean you believe slavery is good? Absolutely not. Absolutely. But I wouldn't want to be without his, like, if you take that out of his story.
Yeah. You potentially lose something.
Well, in a way, sometimes oppression becomes the thing that drives the character or drives the world in a certain way, maybe to fight against it or to rise up above whatever it is.
Yeah.
But without that oppression, the soul is no longer We'll use a term
Yeah.
like that for haha, but you get my point, though.
Yeah.
The sort of magic behind the thing can vanish because there's nothing to push back against. There's no clash of something between something. Or
conflict is where story is. Whatever form
sometimes it is
takes.
interesting. What would a place be like if they were completely bigoted walking around? Well, it's like it's not because you want to enjoy or celebrate that. It's like it's just what is it like? What is it like in a D&D game when you're playing the half orc and the town doesn't want you to come in, type of thing. Like it's prejudice isn't always about promoting. It's more about just seeing how life.
Different kinds of fun. Yeah, different kinds of fun again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, let's go to a more down the middle question. Something I just want to bring up because you've been streaming with the guy for so long. You've been streaming with T-shirt Historian. Yes. How did you two connect, and what has it been like streaming and gaming with the T-shirt Historian?
So he liked my stuff, and he asked me to come on a stream, and we seemed to kind of vibe. And when I form friendships with people, I'm quite loyal to them. So he was happy for me to come back week on week. So I did my best to support him. His channel's taken off not from the streaming, but from his videos on Fist of the North Star and some other anime. So yeah, I'm really happy for him there. He's now started a new second channel, which will be streaming less regularly, but it will be going on. And gaming, even though I'm the forever DM and I like being the forever DM, having someone else to run games occasionally is nice for a break. So
the forever DM. I don't hear that term too many times nowadays. See, I call myself a dedicated DM because it's so feel like I've had to adjust to like now every game I run, I've had to either I don't know. Well, what are you religiously? Are you an atheist or?
Yeah.
Atheist. Okay. Some of us asking if you were a Christian. It's like, almost no, not
I'm a nothing.
I'm a nothing burger. I'm a nothing. I'm just not into it. No, but on the forever DM thing, I'm a dedicated guy, but it's like in the last year or so, I only do my streams on games either I ran or played. That's a principle. So when I do my streams, it's only on games I've had to encounter. So to do more games for last year, I've been asking friends to run games for me. And they're like, you want us to run a game for you, Steven? Yeah, maybe like 2 or 3 sessions just so I can say it. It's like, okay. And they're like, one guy's now ran me through 7 different games. He's like, man, you're an awesome player. I'm like, yeah, I know this. Just shut up. He's like, it's like I retired from playing around the end of around 2000 because I spent over 10 years playing. Here was my problem. My first DM was up here. And then once you have the up here experience, everything else is down here. And I went down here for 10 years and went, okay, it's enough. And I don't call myself forever DM because I'm always offered, but I love actually game mastering. I don't know about you, but I prefer that role. But it is, like you said, it must be nice to be a player. I still have not had that magic experience, even though all the guys who are in the games think I'm having a great time. And for the most part, I am. But it's like I'm okay because it's only 3 sessions at most. I'm free afterwards, so we're good. I had to ask about the T-shirt Historian just because you guys have been connected for so long, and it's almost like you can't really talk about your history now on YouTube without that connection because you guys have been like at the hip. For years now. So I thought that was worth mentioning. And I've watched the two of you quite often.
Yeah.
So
I forget what our code phrase was for switching to Stray Crows.
Are you ready?
I'm kind of reaching my pain tolerance limit for sitting at the
at the desk. Yes. All right. Well, let's talk about the Stray Crows. Okay, Stray Crows, a samurai role-playing game with a 3-book structure. Yep. Definitely. Stray Crows, Autumn Moon, get them all up.
I'm still waiting on the other proofs. So
okay, so I'll let you get. But we got 3 books, which is Ronin, which is the core game. The 3 Candle Crown, which expands it, and I'll let you talk about that. What that means. Autumn Moon, which is one you just showed, also expands the game. So let's talk about the Stray Crows.
Okay. So Strike Rise is sort of mythic role-playing in medieval-ish, early modern-ish Japan. By default, the setting is towards the end of the Sengoku era, which is the era of sort of civil war and strife, and then into the Edo period after that, which is after there was a winner and everything settled down for a couple of centuries. So that's the kind of sweet spot for it. I went for a 3-book structure, but I didn't want to replicate the D&D style 3-book structure, at least not exactly. So the core book has technically everything you need, particularly if you want to play a purely historical campaign. So there's a certain amount of magic if you want to bring it in. There's a bunch of NPCs. There's a bunch of animals. There's a basic sort of primer on the history and the culture and things like the ways in which Japanese storytelling structure is different to Western storytelling structure. It's meant to convey a sort of mood. It's meant to convey a vibe. It's meant to be presented to the games masters. Look, this is interesting stuff about the period that will make your game better if you lean into it.
It is like the core game itself. You could play the game just off that one book alone.
Okay. You don't have to get anything else. If you want to play a purely historical game, that's all you need. Okay. The second book is Three Candle Crown, which is a reference to a sort of folk curse ritual in Japanese folklore. That book has the more expansive version of the magic rules and a whole bunch of spells. It has tons of yokai, so spirits, monsters, goblins, all sorts of weird stuff. And Japan has some very weird and interesting monsters.
So superstition and supernatural really is expanded upon with the Three Candle Crown. Yeah.
If you want to play a more fantastical version of the game, if you want to play like Monster Hunters, or you want magic to be much more present and effective, then you should get the second book as well. The third book is called Autumn Moon, and that contains primarily solo role-playing rules. Kind of new to me. It's kind of relatively new to the hobby, the idea of solo play.
I think it's genius. It's smart market-wise. That's a smart move. There's a lot of people out there that do solo now.
Yeah.
That's a legit thing.
So I've tried to kind of lean into it a bit. So hopefully I've accomplished that. But the thing is, right, that a lot of the tools that are really useful for solo role players are also really useful for games masters. So there's a whole slew of random tables and things in there for you to generate whole villages, towns, the businesses, people. How big is the people's family? How many kids have they got? What province is the father from? You can go as deep as you want. Whether
so you're saying there's two ways to use the book. You can use it for the constructing the solo game you want, but every piece of it can be advanced right over to the normal game master to accomplish all that stuff for their group as well.
If you're preparing for a game, if you're preparing for a game, you can use the tables to generate an adventure. If the players have gone off the beaten track, or you left your notes at home or whatever, within 15 minutes to half an hour, you can have an adventure ready to go, basically. So that's the structure of the books. We've hit some of the stretch goal targets. So on PDF, you will also be getting, if the page will come up, you will also be getting, come on, work. Damn you all. You will also be getting Gaijin, which will be a guide to creating not just Western characters from the period, but also like Koreans, Vietnamese,
awesome stuff.
Other people in the surrounding area. I have ambitions to expand the game into Southeast Asia and other nations in the area, because that history hasn't really been dealt with particularly in RPGs, and a lot of it is super interesting.
It really is. Yep.
So this will be a starting point for that sort of thing. We've also hit for an adventure for the historical setting called Kokuzumushi, which is a rice weevil, if anyone cares. So that'll give you some sort of clue as to what it's about. And we hit the goal to do a source book on the Imjin War, which is when Japan invaded Korea at the tail end of the Sengoku era, and it did not necessarily go well for them. So yeah, that's the three things that are already covered. And then if we hit £13,000, there will be a horror adventure called Sugasawa Village. So.
Well, I promise you this: you got me as a customer, and anybody who's into this type of setting should be guaranteed in. The one thing, when I was younger, I played games like this, like Bushido, which I know is part of the inspiration behind your work here. I always said to myself, man, it's too bad they didn't expand on this like in different directions the way you're talking about. It is nice in 2026 to have you be inspired by that, not make the same thing. It is your own game, but it's still from that timeline. The themes are supernatural, and you're going to expand it in areas I wanted to see Bushido expand. So I'm invested, and I guarantee I'm invested in what you're doing.
So originally, the project was meant to be a retro clone of Bushido.
Yeah.
But I was a little way into the project, and then I discovered that those guys are still alive. They still sell Bushido.
Yep.
And also Sengoku, which was a later sort of redo. So then I thought, well, shit. All right, legally, I could still do a retro clone, but it feels like a bit of a dick move. So what I'll do instead is I will take the ideas, but not the mechanics, and then I will completely do a whole new thing.
I like your choice. I really like your choice, and it's I love Bushido. So it's nice that you have that much respect for those guys that you're just like, you want to know what? I'm not going to do it dirty. I'm not going to do them dirty. I'm going to do my own thing. So it's nice. I'm just saying it is nice to see that some of the ideas I know they use that they didn't expand on. This is something that's going to be unique to your game.
Yeah.
And that's I look forward to that because I know that the guy I'm talking to right now, I know you're a nerd like me. So there's no way you're going to let opportunities pass up. And there's way too much interest in that stuff for you to I guarantee there's an audience out there right now. I know that from covering Bushido and people I talk to. There is a surprising audience for that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy history.
Yeah.
Something I find fun. I enjoy researching history. This was not my specialty by any stretch. So it was a huge learning experience for me and a lot of fun to learn about this point in history and just little things, little details that really bring the world to life, and that I try to convey through the book. And like I say, it's a lot of the work that has gone into this game is creating a particular vibe. I've maybe been a little pretentious about it. Like I suggest table rituals, like clapping your hands before you roll your dice, and reading through a sort of checklist of how to be a good player, how to be a good games master at the start of the session, and things like tidying at the start of the session and tidying at the end of the session to turn it into more of a ritual. And then the book, it's less about being directly illustrative necessarily, though there will still be some conventional illustrations in there. But I've tried to get a whole bunch of Sumi-e style sort of ink and wash artwork, and gone for quite a minimalist layout, 3-column square format book. It's all in service of the vibe to try and convey what I think is the best way to play. Though, of course, I've made my peace that people won't do that, but still.
I think you'd be surprised. I think there's a genuine old school path, one we actually talked about surprisingly, which is like cyberpunk and stuff like that, where there is it's a classic view. It does have its cult following type of people group. But I think even if people just sit down at the table normally with this game, they'll get something wild out of it. But I actually do appreciate that you do give some suggestions because there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think it really does help set atmosphere. You're not lying to people. You're telling them, like, look, I do this, you do this, and you get something real out of it. So you're not lying to them. This is not a selling point for you. This is like you said, do what you love. So you're just telling people, like, this is what I do with my games. Here's a game that especially is affected by doing it. Lay out some mood. It will help you. Because mentally, it's all about mindset, isn't it, my friend?
Yeah.
getting in the mood and the mindset, and from music to other things can get you thinking that way. And when you think that way, your mind goes with it.
Yeah.
Right. It's a focus point. And that's, I think, where a lot of people miss the point of what you're talking about. Old school mind of thinking that way is the focus. But there, we'll end it right there. There's we are, Grim Jim. I love you, my friend. Love everyone who took part in this. And I know there'll be some people out there that are definitely going to be in my audience that are going to buy your game.